Hello again. As we batten down the hatches and prepare for the usual storm of fake history which assails us at this time of year, I must warn viewers that things are likely to be even more bizarre than usual from February the 1st, for a concerted effort is now underway to promote the idea that Britain has always historically been a black country, and that it is white people who are the recent immigrants rather than the black ones. Often when I suggest that this kind of thing is doing the rounds and that this foolishness is seriously being pushed on even young children, some critics invariably claim that I'm setting up a straw man and that nobody believes in such a thing. It's all a fantasy that I've dreamed up just so that I can knock it down easily. I'm bound to say that I don't really blame people for accusing me of such tactics, because the true situation is so extraordinary that when I talk about it, it does sound like some mad idea which I've dreamed up. I mean, can it really be possible that some people honestly believe that Britain really is historically a country with a black majority, and that this was the case for many years? Let's see what people are actually claiming at the moment. Claims which are already likely to make this year's Black History Month, which takes place in February, needless to say, quite an event to remember. I will stick to mainstream stuff, for example, material from local authorities and also big publishers like Bloomsbury Books. Let's start with a simple example. On the 21st of October 2021, City of York councillors approved the motion "Making York an Anti-Racist and Inclusive City." They arranged the drafting and publication of a 5-year anti-racism and inclusion strategy and action plan for the City of York, to which I give a link in the description to this video. This seems to me a fairly sensible source and a way of gauging what people are claiming publicly about the ethnic composition of Britain in the past. I shall quote from page 8. Check it out for yourselves by clicking on the link. York has had a minority ethnic population since Roman times. For instance, black slaves were buried in the city in 200 AD, while other remains suggest there were high status and wealthy people in York from all over the Roman Empire, including North Africa. It has been suggested by one historian that at around that time, the population of York, largely a military garrison town, was predominantly black. There is literally no evidence that a single black person was in York in Roman times. These claims are based on Nazi race science, the measuring of the proportions of skulls, not DNA. Remember Beachy Head Woman, who was claimed to be a black African after the measurement of her skull? Her DNA tells us that she was actually from Europe. Measuring skulls does not tell us that somebody was black or white. This is pseudoscience, the kind of thing beloved of the Nazis, who used it to place people in racial categories. We hear that some historian has said that 2,000 years ago, the majority of the population of a British city was black. I am not inventing this, it's not a straw man. The local authority in one of Britain's largest cities honestly seems to believe that thousands of years ago black people formed the majority of that city's population. Let's look now at what is happening in London at the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton. They currently have an exhibition on called Brilliant Black British History, which is apparently perfect for families and history enthusiasts. Bring your family along to explore, learn and reflect together. It's an excellent opportunity to introduce young minds to the diverse heritage that makes up Britain. This exhibition is based on a book of the same name, which is to say Brilliant Black British History, published by Bloomsbury. The author is a Nigerian called Atanuki. By happy chance, I have a copy of this book on Kindle, and so I'm able to tell you what is claimed in the exhibition, to which, by the way, parties of children are being brought. The book itself has proved very popular with schools where a lot of children are exposed to it. Allow me to quote from one of the panels at the exhibition, which says, in a direct quote from the book, Britain was a black country for more than 7,000 years before white people came, and during that time the most famous British monument was built, Stonehenge. Britain has been a mostly white country for a lot less time than it was a black country, only about 4,500 years. There we are. At one time, apparently for thousands of years, everybody in Britain was black, and black people built Stonehenge. This is not some weird invention of mine. It's rather a fantasy devised and spread through many schools in Britain, facilitated by Bloomsbury Publishing. Here is an explicit statement that this country was once occupied solely by black people for thousands of years. Inevitably, there is mention of Cheddar Man, followed by the following couple of sentences. About 12,000 years ago, modern humans settled in Britain. They were black, like all Western Europeans in those days. I need hardly explain once more that this is nonsense. It's based upon a Channel 4 television programme a few years ago, which was denounced as soon as it came out by the very geneticists whom they had employed. It is not possible by examining ancient DNA to say what colour anybody's skin was. You can say where they came from, perhaps. You cannot say what colour their skin was at all. This hasn't stopped people quoting that television programme endlessly for the last 4 years, and of course it's rehashed in this exhibition. Here then is exactly what I've talked about and been accused of inventing. There is a serious effort among certain groups in Britain to pretend that in the past the majority of people in Britain, or indeed all of them, were black. There is no evidence whatsoever for such claims, and yet they are being made and pushed, especially onto young and vulnerable children. The book from which I've quoted, Brilliant Black British History, is a children's book. We're now coming up to Black History Month, which begins on Thursday, which is the 1st of February, and these claims about Britain having been a majority black country long before the arrival of the Windrush are going to be made explicitly in many schools and libraries. I think it's worth, if not perhaps fighting back is one expression, I think it's certainly worth challenging this foolishness, this nonsense, and explaining that there is no foundation for it in fact. But just to remind people, it's not something I've made up. This is what is happening here and now in Britain.